Yeah, absolutely. Speaking with Denny Stilwell on Jazz 90.1. Denny, so my dream is always to be a record producer. But what actually does a producer do in terms of the studio, in terms of once you're in a session, what does a producer do for folks who are just learning about music in general, who are wanting to learn about the industry? So what does someone like you do on a day-to-day
Yeah,
basis?
well, look, that's, I am not a producer in the sense that I am in the studio any longer, with the artist producing. You'll see an executive producer credit that I get, on most of our projects. And that is more of an administrative role that has to do with, funding and making the resources available, whether it's funding or otherwise, for that session to happen. We have a fantastic head of A&R. His name is Will Wakefield. He's a musician in his own right, and oftentimes he's in the studio, or if not in the studio, very much behind the scenes, kind of pulling the strings on the Mac Avenue recording sessions. But the other thing is that, a lot of artists are producing records themselves and producing themselves these days. And there's been a real learning curve over the last couple of decades, where artists have realized that they need to become producers, and they need to learn something about, the engineering process, and about mic placement, and what makes a good take and what doesn't, or drawing the performance out of a guest artist that's going to be on the album. So a lot of artists are producing their own projects. But to answer your question more directly, the producer is kind of the glue in the studio that holds all the various pieces together. It's the person that's on the side of the glass with the recording console, and the engineer who's listening to the big picture of the performance and seeing if all the pieces fit together, right? And identifying, a really good take, maybe drawing an additional elevated performance out of any of the players, whether that's the vocalist, or a side, a side artist on the session. And basically providing a level of creative inspiration and perspective, right? When you're an artist and you're making a record, you're very close to it. This is your baby. It's really super, super important to you. But you can be so close to something, right? I think we all know that, right? You get so close to something that you get tunnel vision. And sometimes that bigger picture is harder to bring about. So the producer's job is to make sure that bigger picture is always there and is always present, and you don't lose sight of that.
Speaking with Denny Stilwell on Jazz 90.1. So Denny, last question. This is Jazz Appreciation Month. We're in our pledge drive. What can folks do to continue to keep this thing going, in your opinion?
Oh, wow. It's just, I think for those who are existing fans, who are familiar with the genre, it's continuing to discover some of the new talent that's out there. Right. We, especially I don't want to say especially in jazz, but it seems like it's particular to jazz. We go back to these historical moments in time where there were these creative kind of earthquakes, if you will, right, that changed things up. And so we have these tendencies to go back to the bebop era, go back to the big band era, to go back to the fusion era, the 70s, that kind of thing. But there's a lot of great music happening right now by some really fantastic young up and coming players. And the chances are that, there's just a terrific new artist that is doing, that's in that space that maybe you were attracted to, back in the 50s, 60s, or 70s. And I would encourage you to explore that, and look, if you're new to this format, or you're new to the genre of jazz, it's like listening to people like you on the air, plug into your local radio station, and listen to what the DJs are saying, and absorb and learn, from those who really know the music.
Thanks, Denny. Something I was just thinking about as you were saying that with Mac Avenue is that a unique thing, because all the artists that you have on the label all have one thing in common. They're all incredible live performers. It's just almost like it's hearing it gets what's your appetite to see these performers live, because they're all incredible performers in the moment and in concert. So I just noticed that's the one theme that goes through Mac Avenue's artists is that. seeing them in concert is a whole nother experience because they're all incredible performers. So I don't know if that's on was that on purpose or there's kind of like that's the way it happened. But I noticed that's one of a pattern with Back Avenue artists. The
Yeah,
roster.
well, and we can't wait to get back to, you know, into the clubs and into the performing arts centers and get back to, live performances again, which I think are going to come around this fall as we control the
Yeah.
virus. um but yeah, I mean, there's no question. I think, that's it's such an important part of getting the word out about a new recording, is the artist, going out there and performing that material live. It creates that connection for the fan. It's like, okay, you've got these recorded versions that I've been hearing on the radio stations, but here's the live version of that, right?
Right.
And I think it brings that experience full circle. So there's no question that, when we're looking at talent, that, their ability to tour and their desire to be out there and connecting with the audience in that way and presenting this material live is really critical.
I was wondering, is that one of the things you're looking for when you sign an artist? Is sort of how do they present themselves and report themselves in actual live in combat, like combat, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah, it really is. It's critical. And there are some artists who have robust careers, where the majority of what they're doing is in the recording studio and they're not out performing live. And
Right.
they have, either whether they're making their own records or whether they're, providing sideman services to, to other artists, that do that. For Mac Avenue, we tend to lean towards the live performers and those that can tour. That's a tremendous marketing vehicle for us, in particular if those artists are able to tour overseas and tour worldwide. Gives us the opportunity to spread the word.
So, speaking with Denny Stilwell on Jazz 90.1. Denny, again, thank you so much for spending time with us. I know life is always crazy. It ends with a Y, but it's always a different day.
Yeah.
What you got to either
Yeah.
light a fire or put out a fire. So I appreciate you spending time with us today, taking care of
Yeah,
us.
absolutely, man. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Let's do this again next year or in the fall on your next fun drive. All right.
Appreciate that, Denny. All right. Stay safe and be well, my friend.
Yeah, you too.
Take care.
You too.